What's up, everyone? I'm here on my NFL Week 4 DraftKings sleeper/value picks. As always, you can check the link below in the description if you want to watch my main picks video or pretty much talk about the entire main slate. As the title suggests, in this video, I'm going to be talking about guys that I think are being overlooked and or present a good value given their DraftKings price. So let's go ahead and get to this week's picks. So first up, I have Todd Gurley, and I've seen him talked about a little bit, but I still do think he's being slept on, especially considering what he's done so far this season. I mean, first off, this guy has scored 6 touchdowns through 3 games. 6, and he still is not 8K plus. And, you know, one thing I really want to point out about Gurley is that so far this season, we have seen that he's not game flow dependent. Now, let's be honest, in Week 1 and Week 3, he really had the perfect game script. That said, in Week 2, they were contested a little bit by the Washington Redskins. He only had 19 touches in that game, which is his lowest on the season. He's had at least 19, obviously, throughout the entire year. In fact, last week against the San Francisco 49ers, I'm pretty sure he had the most touches of his career at 33 and ended up having 149 total yards. But this is a guy who all of a sudden is being involved in the pass game, and it has raised his value immensely. Not only is he being involved in the pass game, he's also getting, red zone targets. He's getting all the red zone carries. This guy's value has just skyrocketed, and I know a lot of people think that, this is not the perfect scenario for him, and I completely understand that. But with that said, I mean, if we compare him specifically to Ezekiel Elliott so far this season, he has outplayed him in just about every form. Now, granted, I know Elliott has had a little bit stiffer competition on the defensive side of the ball, but I mean, let's be honest, okay? We still have the numbers as a small sample size we have. So with that said, as far as these defenses go, they're very comparable. You have the Rams, who are ranked 19th in DVOA against the rush, whereas you have the Cowboys ranked at 21st against the rush. Then you have the Cowboys ranked 25th against the pass-catching running back in DVOA, whereas you have the Cowboys the Rams once again ranked at 19th. So, in terms of overall DVOA, the Rams are definitely much better currently. As we see this front four with Aaron Donald continue to get more reps together, I suspect it's going to continue. Whereas on the Dallas Cowboys defensive side, I'm not sure I can trust that. So for me, as a whole, I think it definitely makes sense to play Gurley over Elliott for a couple of different reasons. I mean, if we dive even further into the numbers and even look at the offensive line, I mean, an adjusted line yards, which is a stat pretty much just telling us how good the run blocking has been for these teams. We've seen that the Los Angeles Rams right now, according to Football Outsiders at least, are ranked 13th compared to the Dallas Cowboys ranked 25th. If you look at pass protection, they're actually ranked pretty similarly there. We have the Rams ranked all the way up to 5th in adjusted sack rate, whereas we have the Cowboys down in 7th. So they're both pretty good in pass protection as we've seen so far this season. So, I almost would never recommend playing a road underdog running back. But once again, I've said it a few times, I don't think Gurley is game script dependent, and that really, really helps his cause here. All right, so next up, I have Rashard Matthews, and honestly, he's going to be a pretty popular play, especially in cash games, I think. But it definitely makes sense. I mean, with Corey Davis out, he definitely moved into the #1 role, and really he was the #1 receiver anyway there. But Corey Davis, was getting a couple of targets thrown his way. Now we can assume that they're going to get funneled out to at least a handful probably will go Matthews' way. You have to think that some will probably go Decker's way and Delaney Walker, and maybe 1 or 2 to the running backs. But I still think that this is a pretty good play here. I mean, this is a guy who's had 9 targets week 1, 5 targets week 2, 10 targets last week with 6 receptions. He's had at least 1 red zone target every week so far. So all in all, I think he's a pretty good play, especially at the sub 5K price. Okay, so next up I have Golden Tate, and I'd be lying if I said he was someone that I'm overly excited to play any week. But this week is actually a little bit interesting because I think a lot of people are going to be scared away from playing him because they think that he's going to see a lot of Xavier Rhodes. Well, Golden Tate is a guy who moves around a lot, and a lot of times he will line up in the slot if the Lions call him to do that. And Xavier Rhodes does not travel to the slot. So because of that, I expect to see Tate in the slot a lot. This is just a pure spot right here where he doesn't have super high touchdown upside. He should have actually scored 2 touchdowns last week, but the second one was kind of vultured away by the referees there. Anyway, he's just a guy who's probably going to have really low ownership, has a realistic expectation of over 10 targets, which is definitely possible. I mean, in 2 or 3 games so far this season, he's had over 10 targets. So I think it's definitely possible. And if he breaks free and has, a really long reception, it's just going to pad on, because that's not going to stop this team from throwing him the ball. The only way that this guy does not see at least 7 to 8 targets in this game is if somehow, the Lions are able just to move the ball on the ground very effectively and are able to get out to a big lead early, like we saw against the Giants, where we only saw 4 targets. Although he caught all 4, he really didn't get any yards out of them, because, he's an underneath route runner. He's a guy who's not really going to try to beat the team over the top too much, because especially for the Lions, because they already have 2 guys that can do that pretty well right now, and of course Marvin Jones. It looks like Galladay is going to try to be that type of player as well. So Golden Tate is definitely an interesting play, but he's really just a GPP play for me, and I'm not super thrilled to do it there, but I definitely think that it does make sense. Okay, so next up I have Tyrod Taylor, and he is a cheap quarterback that I like a lot this week. And I feel like the big 3, so to speak, of cheap quarterbacks this specific week is Trevor Siemian, Tyrod Taylor, and Deshaun Watson. And really, when I'm looking at these 3 guys, I'm saying, okay, I have to get 15 points for my quarterback. Who is the safest bet? And I keep going to Tyrod and Deshaun mainly because of their rushing upside. And I think that Deshaun Watson has, obviously he's shown that he can get that long rushing touchdown, against the Bengals on Thursday night game. Whereas Tyrod, although he will run it, so far this season he's run it 8 times in every single game. He has 8 rushing attempts. So, he has that in his back pocket. He's never really going to break out a super long rushing touchdown, but he does have a rushing touchdown at his disposal. He's not a guy who's going to throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. He's a guy who's going to throw for 230 or so, and, hopefully can sneak in on the ground, which he has yet to do so far this season. So for me, I'm leaning to Tyrod as my favorite cheap cash game quarterback. But honestly, any of these 3, I feel like they can have an okay game. I mean, Deshaun Watson's probably the least, proven of the 3. Trevor Siemian, I'm not a true believer in Siemian. He's looked good so far this season, but I'm not sure if that's a fluke or not. I feel like Simeon's probably going to be the most popular out of the 3. He does have a little bit of running upside as well, which is kind of interesting, but I'm not going to bank on that. The one thing with the Broncos is I'm just worried that they're going to be able to shut out this Raiders offense entirely and, really just try to ice the game and kind of take the air out of the ball and, try to play the ball control game as we've seen them do in the past, and kind of just have Siemian manage the game. And if that happens, it's going to be a little bit worrisome for me to play him. I still think some of his wide receivers are in play, but I think I like Tyrod Taylor the most. Tell me, out of those 3 cheap guys, who is your favorite? All right, so next up I have Evan Ingram, and he's kind of grown on me the more and more I look at the numbers for this guy. So first off, at $3K, I like the price. This is about as cheap as I would go at tight end this week. I don't think there's anybody under $3K that's playable. Like 3.5 to 3K exactly is really kind of in the realm of tight end and cash games I think you need to be at. A lot of people mentioned Evan Ingram. A lot of people mentioned Austin Seferian-Jenkins and Jesse James and even Ryan Griffin in the comment section on my main picks video, because I was so kind of, iffy on who to play. Really Evan Ingram's the guy who stood out the most to me. I don't have a lot of interest in Jesse James. He's a guy that's not going to catch 6 passes often. He's a guy who's got to catch 2 touchdowns to score 20 points on DraftKings, and he's just not going to do that often. I know that he did that in week 1 against the Browns, but I think he was also limited today at practice, so that definitely is a little bit worrisome as well. I don't have much interest in Seferian-Jenkins. I guess I get the process of wanting to play him. Jacksonville has been so good in the secondary, but their linebacking core is not ideal to face somebody like Seferian-Jenkins. I mean, he's very athletic. He's a good player. Hasn't been in the league that long. Was suspended. I think he got traded to the Jets or was signed. I think he was released by the Bucs, actually signed by the Jets last season, then got suspended or something. I don't know, but regardless, he's not a bad player. He's probably the best tight end the Jets have had in a long time. It's just I just don't have any confidence in him yet, especially against this defense. So I'll see how that plays out this week, but I probably won't be playing any of him. Ingram is the guy that I ended up liking the most, aside from guys like Charles Clay and Jared Cook and the other guys I've already talked about, Ebron. And just because, he's had a steady dose of targets. He's had at least 5 targets in all 3 games so far this season. He had 7 in the past 2 games. He hasn't done a lot with them, but, definitely no complaints there. He only has 2 red zone targets on the season so far. Was able to catch one of them for a touchdown in week 2. So, I don't know. I'm not overly thrilled to play him against the Bucs, who right now actually have the highest rated DVOA against tight ends, but that's a little bit of a fluke to me because if we go back and look at who they faced, last week they faced the Vikings and Kyle Rudolph, who it's been pretty well documented. Kyle Rudolph has been blocking a lot recently. They also faced the Bears with Mike Glennon. Although I do like Zach Miller, I do not like Mike Glennon. So, honestly, I don't think that was a huge surprise to see them rated so highly, considering they haven't faced a special tight end yet. So Ingram's probably the best tight end they've faced so far this season. At $3K, I don't hate it in cash. I may go that route. I may go Ebron. Really just got to see who I end up deciding on. They're pretty much same price. And, we'll see there. But right now, I don't mind Evan Ingram. So finishing up here with Wendell Smallwood. And I usually wouldn't do this, but I'm putting him on the screen and talking about him. But he is not a guy that I want to play. I know there's a lot of hype around him. He's probably one of the cheapest running backs that is borderline in play, but I just don't have much interest in him. I feel like he's not going to get any goal line work to Blunt. I just feel like they're going to end up playing Blunt more. Like, I know we just saw the coach come out, or someone come out in the Eagles organization and say that there's no doubt, in quotes there, that Smallwood will have a bigger role, but I just don't have a lot of faith in it. The Eagles just signed Kenyon Barner, who had a little bit of a workload last season as well, to kind of hopefully fill in and basically probably take on Smallwood's role, and then Wendell Smallwood will move into Darren Sproles' role, and then Blunt will kind of be doing what Blunt's been doing. So I just don't have a lot of interest in it. Let me know what you're thinking, but I don't want to play him in cash. I don't see a ton of touchdown upside here. I just don't have a lot of interest in him. And like I said, usually this wouldn't be something that I would do, but I've just been getting so many questions about him that I just really wanted to address it. So for me, I don't have a ton of interest in him. But if you do, please let me know why you are so interested in this play. Aside from the value, do you really think that he has as much potential as, a lot of the DFS industry is hyping him up? Alright, so that's going to do it for this week's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like. Also, be sure to check out my Twitch link down in the description below. I'm hoping that I can get to a live stream on Saturday. I want to kind of talk about the slate, in real time, talk about what my thoughts are, and of course, hopefully we can get to building some group lineups. So if you want to check that out, be sure to follow the Twitch channel down below. And, be sure to check out my main picks video if you have not already, like I talked about earlier. Anyway, I will catch you guys in the next one. Later.